Graphic applications have changed just as significantly as development applications. Photoshop, basically the creative suite in general, is a really good example of how drastically things have changed. I mean, I remember using Photoshop before there were layers. And I tell my other students about that, and I even tell some of my friends and relatives, like, they can't even imagine using Photoshop without the layers palette. And I was like, yeah, you had to do crazy stuff to imagine trying to create a drop shadow without the layers palette. There was just crazy stuff that you had to do certain things. Um, and the same thing with, Photoshop and Illustrator. Now, the difference between bitmap and raster and vector artwork. Well, now Photoshop has a few vector tools inside of it. Illustrator has a few raster tools inside of it. So it's really, it's taking the graphical application and using it the way your industry needs you to use it. So that's what I've noticed, is just that through the years, like, I want to say, like, right now Photoshop has hundreds of tools inside of it. I don't really know if Photoshop does anything more than it did 5 years ago. There's just a button that does something in 2 seconds for you now that used to take 2 minutes. So I tell that to a lot of people, and they kind of get that, Mm-hmm. There's only so much you can do with a pixel.
Um, Talking about graphic applications, the best that I get to is working with paint.net and maybe Photoshop once in a while. But while I'm not graphically inclined, I will say that the tools that you can get for free, like the GIMP and paint.net, is actually my favorite. They've cheap, actually free, and relatively easy to use, because when I sit down, and me being a novice to Photoshop, I have no idea what I'm doing. And if I can now I'm finding applications that are easier for me to take something that a professional has done and look at it and examine it and understand what I'm doing and not get completely overwhelmed.
There seems to be a lot more, at least with the Adobe Creative Suite, a lot more round tripping available, so you can kind of go from one to the other nicely in a fluid fashion. So I can jump from Photoshop into Illustrator, into InDesign, then into Dreamweaver or Fireworks fairly easily now, where it used to be a big pain to do that.
Well, and now there's so many tools available in the cloud or online that are fairly powerful. Mm-hmm. You don't need to necessarily buy software and have it installed on your computer. I think that's pretty fascinating, just how far that whole industry's come, mm-hmm. and what you can do with graphics right on some online software.
And a neat recent development is that a lot of these software apps are integrating with third parties now, like plugins, so you can actually get fonts from third-party services and actually view them inside of Photoshop, mm-hmm. as well as stock photography. Now you can actually look at it in there instead of having to go out and get it. So some of that's happening, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Most of the time when we're acquiring sources for our graphics, most of the time they're provided by the client. Very rarely do we have to go out, to stock photo places and search for graphics. Typically our clients either provide original custom graphics, or they will do the searching and have the stock photos ready for us to use. When it comes to, like, user interfaces, typically we will take those graphics that the client gives us and build a interface that reflects maybe the colors that are in those graphics, or kind of the styles that we see within those graphics. So all of the user interfaces are created from scratch by us, or by a freelancer that we might hire. But as far as actual physical content graphics, most of those are supplied by the client.
Well, we do what everybody does. We just go on Google Images, type a word in, and then grab whatever pictures pop up. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, don't do that at home, kids. No, that's a very bad thing. What we do for graphics depends. If they want an illustration done, we have illustrators we can refer people to. That said, the cool thing about living nowadays is that there's lots of really cheap stock photography websites out there now. Stock photography used to be outrageously priced. Now, thanks to websites like iStockPhoto and Morguefile, and there's a jillion others, you can get very reasonably priced stock images that have licenses associated with them that will let you put them on websites, reuse them, thanks to Creative Commons licensed images out there. So Flickr has a Creative Commons search engine on Flickr that let you find Creative Commons images. And Creative Commons, for those who don't know, is a license where people say with the Creative Commons license, I want you to use this. I am hereby telling the world I am sharing this image for people to use, maybe not commercially, or maybe you can't really alter it much, or maybe you can. The license lets you specify that. Creative Commons is a great way to find really awesome art, photography, and then use it. So those are some of our sources. We use cheap stock photos, Creative Commons. We also ask the clients what assets they have, and we collect those assets and use what we can. So there's various ways to get it.
Typically, when I work with graphics, or I have any opportunity to do so, I'll work with a creative firm. Maybe even down to photographers. Most of the creatives that I work with are able to deliver that kind of a breadth of content. The only thing that I worry myself with is they know what I want and can work independently and have good portfolio to represent. And if they're using any imagery, we know to pay for it, and it's not going to get us any trademarking issues. But that's the extent of where I go. I find an expert, and I work with the expert, and I trust their judgment.
Typically, Chris designs, or our other graphic designers will design the graphics. We do use stock photography for simpler needs.
Or just Google Images.
But we will. But mostly like logos or designs, they're original, and people usually come to us looking for that.
One issue that we ran into was we were doing a project for a medical device, and we could not use pictures of people. There was some, I'm sure I'm going to get this wrong, but there was some law or some mandate that said that you can't give a photographic model a disease. Even though they signed a waiver saying that you can use their photo for whatever you want, you can't give them a disease. So we had to take all the photos of these people and hire a cartoonist to basically create cartoons of the people. And that got around this weird, whatever it was, law, mandate, directive that said we can't use real people in this project.
You've taken your own photographs of interesting things that you can't tell what they are, and they work their way into some part of the design. I know we've done things like that.
Something that's all hide hidden images inside of it.
Yeah, Easter eggs. Hide something into an image, but.
If you used to splice those, when they did film, they used to splice them in the frames.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Just to be crazy.
Yeah.
Just
So
to
it
put it
shows
there.
up on a corporate site. Like, if you look really closely, you'll see that.